Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. We're still self-isolated over here because I'm over 70 years old, coming up to 74 actually. But we're happier than I've ever been before. It's a little unusual, maybe not unusual, because being absorbed in serving the devotees like this, like reading to the devotees and doing my seva to the BBT, etc., etc. It's lovely, actually. We're not these bodies and we're not these minds. And when we engage in pure devotional service, then we get a taste of that, even if we don't understand completely what it means. But now we're reading Caitanya-caritämrta, and we're on the 5th chapter, and we're going to find out what it means in all detail. Caitanya-caritämrta, the perfect Shastra. This is what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said in poetic glorification of the Bhagavatam. In due course, Mahapralaya, devastating floods, will inundate the entire universe. If you attempt to survive by swimming in that deluge, then do not neglect to take hold of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. Or, if you cannot hold all three, then release Bhagavad Gita. If necessary, you may also relinquish Srimad Bhagavatam, but under no circumstances release your hold on Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. For if this one book remains, then the flood can do no actual damage, because after it is subsided, the message of Shastra can be revived from Sri Caitanya-caritämrta alone, it being the essence of all Shastra. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityänanda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityänanda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityänanda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktavinda. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is proving that the quadruple forms, expansions of Mahasankarshan are eternal and not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we reached a purport. I stopped a little early yesterday because I realized I wasn't going to get through this purport. This purport is one of the longer purports in Srila Prabhupada's books. So please listen very attentively, and we'll talk to you in about an hour or so. Text 41. Chapter 5, Ädi-lilä, Caitanya-caritämrta. Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha constitute this second quadruple. They are purely transcendental. Purport. Sripad Shankaracharya has misleadingly explained the quadruple form, Chaturvyuha, in his interpretation of the 42nd aphorism of chapter 2 of the second kanda of the Vedanta Sutra, Utpatyasambhavat. Utpatyasambhavat. In verses 41 through 47 of this chapter, and now we're on 41. This is the first of these 6 chapters, or 7 chapters. In verses 41 through 47 of this chapter of Sri Caitanya-caritämrta, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami answers Sripad Shankaracharya's misleading objections to the personal feature of the Absolute Truth. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is not like a material object that can be known by experimental knowledge or sense perception. In the Narada-Pancharatra, this fact has been explained by Narayana himself to Lord Shiva. But Shankaracharya, the incarnation of Shiva, under the order of Narayana, his master, had to mislead the monists who favor ultimate extinction. In the conditioned stage of existence, all living entities have 4 basic defects, of which one is the cheating propensity. Shankaracharya has carried this cheating propensity to the extreme to mislead the monists. Actually, the explanation of the quadruple forms in the Vedic literature cannot be understood by the speculation of a conditioned soul. The quadruple forms should therefore be accepted just as they are described. The authority of the Vedas is such that even if one does not understand something by his limited perception, he should accept the Vedic injunction and not create interpretations to suit his imperfect understanding. In his Shariraka Bhasha, however, Shankaracharya has increased the misunderstanding of the monists. The quadruple forms have a spiritual existence that can be realized in Vasudeva Sattva, Shuddha Sattva, or unqualified goodness, which accompanies complete absorption in the understanding of Vasudeva. The quadruple forms, who are full in the 6 opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are the enjoyers of the internal potency. Thinking the Absolute Personality of Godhead to be poverty-stricken, or to have no potency, or in other words, to be impotent, is simply rascaldom. This rascaldom is the profession of the conditioned soul, and it increases his bewilderment. One who cannot understand the distinctions between the spiritual world and the material world has no qualification to examine or know the situation of the transcendental quadruple forms. In his commentary on Vedanta Sutra 2.2, 42 through 45, His Holiness Shripad Shankaracharya has made a futile attempt to nullify the existence of these quadruple forms in the spiritual world. Shankaracharya says in Sutra 42 that devotees think the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Sri Krishna, to be one, to be free from material qualities, and to have a transcendental body, full of bliss and eternal existence. He is the ultimate goal of the devotees, who believe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands himself into 4 other eternal transcendental forms: Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. From Vasudeva, who is the primary expansion, come Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha in that order. Another name of Vasudeva is Paramatma. Another name of Sankarsana is Jiva, the living entity. Another name, this is the Shankaracharya speaking. This is not us. Shankaracharya is Jiva, the living entity. Another name of Pradyumna is mind. And another name of Aniruddha is, this is Shankaracharya saying what the devotees think. Another name of Vasudeva is Paramatma. Another name of Sankarsana is Jiva, the living entity. Another name of Pradyumna is mind. And another name of Aniruddha is Ahankara, false ego. Among these expansions, Vasudeva is considered the origin of the material nature. Therefore, Shankaracharya says that Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha must be creations of that original cause. Great souls assert that Narayana, who is known as the Paramatma, or supersoul, is beyond material nature, and this is in accordance with the statements of the Vedic literature. Mayavadis also agree that Narayana can expand himself in various forms. Shankar says that he does not attempt to argue that portion of the devotee's understanding, but must protest the idea that Sankarshan is produced from Vasudeva, Pradyumna is produced from Sankarshan, and Aniruddha is produced from Pradyumna. For if Sankarshan is understood to represent the living entities created from the body of Vasudeva, the living entities would have to be non-eternal. The living entities are supposed to be freed from material contamination by engaging in prolonged temple worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, reading Vedic literature, and performing yoga and various activities to attain the Supreme Lord. But if the living entities had been created from material nature at a certain point, they would be non-eternal and would have no chance to be liberated and associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When a cause is nullified, its results are nullified. In the second chapter of the Vedanta Sutra's second Kanda, Acharya Vedavyas has also refuted the conception that the living beings were ever born, natma shuter nityat vach chatabhyaha. Because there is no creation for the living entities, they must be eternal. Shankaracharya says in Sutra 43, his commentary on Sutra 43, that devotees think that Pradyumna, who is considered to represent the senses, has sprung from Sankarshan, who is considered to represent the living entities. But we cannot actually experience that a person can produce senses. Devotees also say that from Pradyumna has sprung Aniruddha, who is considered to represent the ego. But Shankaracharya says that unless the devotees can show how ego and the means of knowledge can generate from a person, such an explanation of the Vedanta Sutra cannot be accepted, for no other philosophers accept the sutras in that way. Shankaracharya also says, Sutra 44, Shankaracharya also says, Sutra 44, that he cannot accept the devotee's idea that Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are equally as powerful as the absolute personality of Godhead, full in the six opulences of knowledge, wealth, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation, and free from the flaw of generation at a certain point. Even if they are full expansions, the flaw of generation remains. Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, being distinct individual persons, cannot be one. Therefore, if they are accepted as absolute, full, and equal, there would have to be many personalities of Godhead. But there is no need to accept that there are many personalities of Godhead, because acceptance of one omnipotent God is sufficient for all purposes. The acceptance of more than one God is contradictory to the conclusion that Lord Vasudeva, the absolute personality of Godhead, is one without a second. Even if we agree to accept that the quadruple forms of Godhead are all identical, we cannot avoid the incongruous flaw of non-eternity. Unless we accept that there are some differences among the personalities, there is no meaning to the idea that Sankarshan is an expansion of Vasudeva, Pradyumna is an expansion of Sankarshan, and Aniruddha is an expansion of Pradyumna. There must be a distinction between cause and effect. For example, a pot is distinct from the earth from which it is made, and therefore we can ascertain that the earth is the cause and the pot is the effect. Without such distinctions, there is no meaning to cause and effect. Furthermore, the followers of the Pancharatric principles do not accept any differences in knowledge and qualities between Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. The devotees accept all these expansions to be one, but why should they restrict oneness to these quadruple expansions? Certainly, we should not do so, for all living entities, from Brahma to the insignificant ant, are expansions of Vasudeva, as accepted in all the Shrutis and Smritis. So this is all Shankaracharya, just to keep you in tune, so that you don't become a Mayavadi by listening to this. Shankaracharya also says, Sutra 45, that the devotees who follow the Pancharatra state that God's qualities and God himself, as the owner of the qualities, are the same. But how can the Bhagavat school state that the six opulences, wisdom, wealth, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation, are identical with Lord Vasudeva? This is impossible. In his Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Purva 5:165 to 193, Srila Rupa Goswami has refuted the charges directed against the devotees by Sripad Shankaracharya regarding their explanation of the quadruple forms Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Rupa Goswami says that these four expansions of Narayana are present in the spiritual sky, where they are famous as Mahavasta. Among them, Vasudeva is worshipped within the heart by meditation, because he is the predominating deity of the heart, as explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 4.3.23. Sankarshan, the second expansion, is Vasudeva's personal expansion for pastimes, and since he is the reservoir of all living entities, he is sometimes called Jiva. The beauty of Sankarshan is greater than that of innumerable full moons radiating light beams. He is worshipable as the principle of ego. He has invested Anantadev with all the potencies of sustenance. For the dissolution of the creation, he also exhibits himself as the supersoul in Rudra, in Adharma, the personality of irreligion, in Sarpa, snakes, in Antaka, Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, and in the demons. Pradyumna, the third manifestation, appears from Sankarshan. Those who are especially intelligent worship this Pradyumna expansion of Sankarshan as the principle of the intelligence. The goddess of fortune always chants the glories of Pradyumna in the place known as Ilavrita Varsh, and she always serves him with great devotion. His complexion appears sometimes golden and sometimes bluish, like new monsoon clouds in the sky. He is the origin of the creation of the material world, and he has invested his creative principle in Cupid. It is by his direction only that all men and demigods and other living entities function with energy for regeneration. Aniruddha, the fourth of the quadruple expansions, is worshipped by great sages and psychologists as the principle of the mind. His complexion is similar to the bluish hue of a blue cloud. He engages in the maintenance of the cosmic manifestation and is the supersoul of Dharma, the deity of religiosity. The Manus, the progenitors of mankind, and the Devatas, demigods. The Moksha Dharma, Vedic scripture, indicates that Pradyumna is the deity of the total mind, whereas Aniruddha is the deity of the total ego. But previous statements regarding the quadruple forms are not confirmed in the Pancharatra Tantras in all respects. In the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Purva 5:86 through 100, there is a lucid explanation of the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme personality of Godhead. Negating Shankaracharya's statements, the Mahavaraha Purana states, Sarve nitya shashvatas cha dehas tasya paratmanaha hano padhana rahita naiva prakriti jat kvachit. All the varied expansions of the personality of Godhead are transcendental and eternal, and all of them repeatedly descend to all the different universes of the material creation. Their bodies, composed of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, are everlasting. There is no chance of their decaying, for they are not creations of the material world. Their forms are concentrated spiritual existence, always complete with all spiritual qualities and devoid of material contamination. Confirming these statements, the Narada Pancharatra asserts, Manir yata vibhagena nila pita dibir yutaha rupa bedam avapnoti dhyana bedat tatachutaha. The infallible personality of Godhead can manifest his body in different ways according to different modes of worship, just as the Vaidurya gem can manifest itself in various colors, such as blue and yellow. Each incarnation is distinct from all the others. This is possible by the Lord's inconceivable potency, by which he can simultaneously represent himself as one, as various partial forms, and as the origin of these partial forms. Nothing is impossible for his inconceivable potencies. That is the key statement. I'll read that again. Shankaracharya can't accept that if there are 4 different forms, they can't be the same form, because he has a material conception of cause and effect. But here's the statement. Nothing is impossible for his inconceivable potencies. Shankaracharya teaches that the Lord cannot have inconceivable potencies. Krishna is one without a second, but he manifests himself in different bodies, as stated by Narada in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Chitram Vaitatat Ekena Chitram Vaitatat Ekena Vapusha Yugapat Pritak Griheshu Dvashta Sahasram Striya Eka Udavahat. It is wonderful indeed that one Krishna has simultaneously become different Krishnas in 16,000 palaces to accept 16,000 queens as his wives. Bhagavatam 10:69-2. The Padma Purana also explains, Sadevo Bahuda Bhutva Nirgunat Purushottamaha Eki Bhuya Punak Shete Nirdosho Harir Adikrit. The same personality of Godhead, Purushottama, the original person, who is always devoid of material qualities and contamination, can exhibit himself in various forms and at the same time lie down in one form. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam it is said, Yajanti Tvam Mayas Tvam Vai Bahu Murtika Murtikam. O my Lord, although you manifest yourself in varieties of forms, you are one without a second. Therefore, pure devotees concentrate upon you and worship only you. Bhagavatam 10:47. In the Kurma Purana, it is said, Astulash chanunush chaiva stulo nush chaiva sarvataha avarnak sarvatak prokta shamo raktantalochanaha. The Lord is personal, although impersonal. He is atomic, although great, and he is blackish and has red eyes, although he is colorless. By material calculation, all this may appear contradictory, But if we understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has inconceivable potencies, we can accept these facts as eternally possible in Him. In our present condition, we cannot understand the spiritual activities and how they occur, but although they are inconceivable in the material context, we should not disregard such contradictory conceptions. Although it is apparently inconceivable, it is quite possible for the Absolute to reconcile all opposing elements. Srimad Bhagavatam establishes this in the 6th canto, 6-9, 34 through 37. O my Lord, your transcendental pastimes, O my Lord, your transcendental pastimes and enjoyments all appear inconceivable, because they are not limited by the causal and effective actions of material thought. You can do everything without performing bodily work. The Vedas say that the Absolute Truth has multifarious potencies and does not need to do anything personally. My dear Lord, you are entirely devoid of material qualities. Without anyone's help, you can create, maintain, and dissolve the entire qualitative material manifestation. Excuse me. Without anyone's help, you can create, maintain, and dissolve the entire qualitative material manifestation. Yet in all such activities, you do not change. You do not accept the results of your activities, unlike ordinary demons and demigods who suffer or enjoy the reactions of their activities in the material world. Unaffected by the reactions of work, you eternally exist with your full spiritual potency. Thus, we cannot fully understand. Because you are unlimited in your 6 opulences, no one can count your transcendental qualities. Philosophers and other thoughtful persons are overwhelmed by the contradictory manifestations of the physical world and the propositions of logical arguments and judgments, because they are bewildered by word jugglery and disturbed by the different calculations of the scriptures. Their theories cannot touch you, who are the ruler and controller of everyone, and whose glories are beyond conception. Your inconceivable potency keeps you unattached to the mundane qualities. Surpassing all conceptions of material contemplation, your pure transcendental knowledge keeps you beyond all speculative processes. By your inconceivable potency, there is nothing contradictory in you. People may sometimes think of you as impersonal or personal, but you are one. For persons who are confused or bewildered, a rope may appear to manifest itself as different kinds of snakes. For similar confused persons who are uncertain about you, you create various philosophical methods in pursuance of their uncertain positions. We should always remember the differences between spiritual and material actions. So what we just read, those are actually verses. 6th canto, Bhagavatam, 34 through 37. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We just read 7 verses, translations of 7 verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which reconcile these apparently inconceivable or apparently contradictory conceptions about God. Now we're back to the text. We should always remember the differences between spiritual and material actions. The Supreme Lord, being all spiritual, can perform any act without extraneous help. In the material world, if we want to manufacture an earthen pot, we need the ingredients, a machine, and also a laborer. But we should not extend this idea to the actions of the Supreme Lord, for He can create anything in a moment without that which appears necessary in our material conception. When the Lord appears as an incarnation to fulfill a particular purpose, this does not mean that he is unable to fulfill it without appearing. He can do anything simply by his will, but by his causeless mercy, he appears to be dependent upon his devotees. He appears as the son of Yashoda-mata, not because he is dependent on her care, but because he accepts such a role by his causeless mercy. When he appears for the protection of his devotees, he naturally accepts trials and tribulations on their behalf. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said that the Lord, being equally disposed toward every living being, has no enemies and no friends, but that he has special affection for a devotee who always thinks of him in love. Therefore, neutrality and partiality are both among the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and they are properly adjusted by his inconceivable energy. The Lord is Parabrahman, or the source of the impersonal Brahma, which is his all-pervading feature of neutrality. In his personal feature, however, as the owner of all transcendental opulences, the Lord displays his partiality by taking the side of his devotees. Partiality, neutrality, and all such qualities are present in God. Otherwise, they could not be experienced in the creation. Since he is the total existence, all things are properly adjusted in the Absolute. In the relative world, such qualities are displayed in a perverted manner, and therefore we experience non-duality as a perverted reflection. Because there is no logic to explain how things happen in the realm of spirit, the Lord is sometimes described as being beyond the range of experience. But if we simply accept the Lord's inconceivability, we can then adjust all things in him. Non-devotees cannot understand the Lord's inconceivable energy, and consequently for them, it is said that he is beyond the range of conceivable expression. The author of the Brahma Sutras accepts this fact and says, Shrutes tu shabda mulat vat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being inconceivable to an ordinary man, can be understood only through the evidence of the Vedic injunctions. The Skanda Purana confirms, Achintya kalu ye bhava natangs tarkena yojayat. Matters inconceivable to a common man should not be a subject for argument. I'll repeat that again. Matters inconceivable to a common man should not be a subject for argument. We find very wonderful qualities even in such material things as jewels and drugs. Indeed, their qualities often appear inconceivable. Therefore, if we do not attribute inconceivable potencies to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we cannot establish his supremacy. I'll repeat that again. Therefore, if we do not attribute inconceivable potencies to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we cannot establish his supremacy. It is because of these inconceivable potencies that the glories of the Lord have always been accepted as difficult to understand. Ignorance and jugglery of words are very common in human society, but they do not help one understand the inconceivable energies of the personality of Godhead. If we accept such ignorance and word jugglery, we cannot accept the Supreme Lord's perfection in 6 opulences. For example, one of the opulences of the Supreme Lord is complete knowledge. Therefore, how could ignorance be conceivable in him? Vedic instructions and sensible arguments establish that the Lord's maintaining the cosmic manifestation and simultaneously being indifferent to the activities of its maintenance cannot be contradictory because of his inconceivable energies. To a person who is always absorbed in the thought of snakes, a rope always appears to be a snake. And similarly, to a person bewildered by material qualities and devoid of knowledge of the Absolute, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears according to diverse, bewildered conclusions. Someone might argue that the Absolute Truth would be affected by duality if he were born all cognizant. I'll read it again. Someone might argue that the Absolute would be affected by duality if he were both all cognizance, Brahman, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead with 6 opulences in full, Bhagavan. To refute such an argument, the aphorism Sarupa Dvayam Ikshate declares that in spite of appearances, there is no chance of duality in the Absolute, for he is but one in diverse manifestations. Understanding that the Absolute displays varied pastimes by the influence of his energies at once removes the apparent incongruity of his inconceivably opposite energies. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.4.16 gives the following description of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. Karmanyan yani yasye bhavo bhavasyate durgashrayo tari bayat palayanam kalatmano yat pramada yutashraya swatmanrate kid yatidir vidam miha. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to do, he nevertheless acts. Although he is always unborn, he nevertheless takes birth. Although he is time, fearful to everyone, he flees Mathura in fear of his enemy to take shelter in a fort. And although he is self-sufficient, he marries 16,000 women. These pastimes seem like bewildering contradictions even to the most intelligent. Had these activities of the Lord not been a reality, sages would not have been puzzled by them. Therefore, Had these activities of the Lord not been a reality, sages would not have been puzzled by them. Therefore, such activities should never be considered imaginary. Whenever the Lord desires, his inconceivable energy, Yogamaya, serves him in creating and performing such pastimes. The scriptures known as the Pancharatra Shastras are recognized Vedic scriptures that have been accepted by the great acharyas. These scriptures are not products of the modes of passion and ignorance. Learned scholars and Brahmanas, therefore, always refer to them as Sattvata Samhitas. The original speaker of these scriptures is Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is especially mentioned in the Moksha Dharma 349-68, which is a part of the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. Liberated sages like Narada and Vyasa, who are free from the 4 defects of conditioned souls, are the propagators of these scriptures. Sri Narada Muni is the original speaker of the Pancharatra Shastra. Srimad Bhagavatam is also considered a Sattvata Samhita. Indeed, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam. Srimad Bhagavatam is a spotless Purana. Malicious editors and scholars who attempt to misrepresent the Pancharatra Shastras to refute their regulations are most abominable. In the modern age, such malicious scholars have even commented misleadingly upon the Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken by Krishna, to prove that there is no Krishna. How the Mayavadis have misrepresented the Pancharatrika Vidhi will be shown below. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to be again talking about Shankaracharya. So remember and don't accept these things. Would anyone like popcorn and, lemonade, and while we're going through this little break in the intensity? I'm just pausing, give us a little chance for our mind and intelligence to catch up. Now Shankaracharya, the Mayavadis, are going to misrepresent the Pancharatriki Vidhi, which was just explained by the Bhagavatam as inconceivable, and Krishna as the spotless, and Bhagavatam as the spotless Purana. Here we go. 1. In commenting on Vedanta Sutra 2.2.42, Sripad Shankaracharya has claimed that Sankarshan is a jiva, an ordinary living entity. But there is no evidence in any Vedic scripture that devotees of the Lord have ever said that Sankarshan is an ordinary living entity. He is an infallible plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Vishnu category, and he is beyond the creation of material nature. He is the original source of the living entities. The Upanishads declare Nityo, Nityanam, Chaitanas, Chaitananam. He is the supreme living entity among all the living entities. Kata Upanishad 2.2.13. Therefore he is Vibhu Chaitanya, the greatest. He is directly the cause of the cosmic manifestation and the infinitesimal living beings. He is the infinite living entity, and ordinary living entities are infinitesimal. Therefore he is never to be considered an ordinary living being, for that would be against the conclusion of the authorized scriptures. The living entities are also beyond the limitations of birth and death. This is the version of the Vedas, and it is accepted by those who follow scriptural injunctions and those who have actually descended in the disciplic succession. 2. In answer to Shankaracharya's commentary on Vedanta Sutra 2.2.43, it must be said that the original Vishnu of all the Vishnu categories, which are distributed in several ways, is Mula Sankarshan. Mula means the original. Sankarshan is also Vishnu, but from him all other Vishnus expand. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 5.46, wherein it is said that just as a flame transferred from one flame acts like the original, so the Vishnus who emanate from Mula Sankarshan are as good as the original Vishnu. One should worship that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, who thus expands himself. So I made a little mistake when we started this section. I said, now we're going to hear about Shankaracharya, so don't. But what I meant to say was, we're going to hear Shankaracharya's misconceptions one after the other, and the Vaishnava Acharya's refutation of those misconceptions. That's what's happening. So, we've heard the 42nd and 43rd aphorism, misconception of Shankaracharya. And now we're going to hear about the 44th. 3. In reply to the commentary of Shankaracharya on the 44th aphorism, it may be said that no pure devotees, strictly following the principles of the Pancharatra, will ever accept the statement that all the expansions of Vishnu are different identities. For this idea is completely false. Even Sripad Shankaracharya, in his commentary on the 42nd aphorism, has accepted that the personality of Godhead can automatically expand himself variously. Therefore, his commentary on the 42nd aphorism and his commentary on the 44th aphorism are contradictory. It is a defect of Mayavad commentaries that they make one statement in one place and a contradictory statement in another place as a tactic to refute the Bhagavad school. Thus, Mayavadi commentators do not even follow regulated principles. It should be noted that although the Bhagavad school accepts the quadruple forms of Narayana, that does not mean that it accepts many gods. Devotees know perfectly well that the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is one without a second. They are never pantheists, worshippers of many gods, for this is against the injunction of the Vedas. Devotees completely believe, with strong faith, that Narayana is transcendental and has inconceivable proprietorship of various transcendental potencies. We therefore recommend that scholars consult the Laghu Bhagavatamrita of Srila Rupa Goswami, where these ideas are explicitly stated. Sripad Shankaracharya has tried to prove that Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha expand through cause and effect. He has compared them with earth and earthen pots. That is completely ignorant, however, for there is no such thing as cause and effect in their expansions. Nanyad Yat Sadasat Param. The Kurma Purana also confirms Deha Dehi Vibedo Yam Neshware Vidyate Kvachit. There is no difference between the body and soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Cause and effect are material. For example, it is seen that a father's body is the cause of his son's body, but the soul is neither cause nor effect. On the spiritual platform, there are none of the differences that we find in cause and effect. Since all the forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are spiritually supreme, they are equally controllers of material nature. Standing on the fourth dimension, they are predominating figures on the transcendental platform. There is no trace of material contamination in their expansions because material laws cannot influence them. There is no such rule as cause and effect outside of the material world. Therefore, the understanding of cause and effect cannot approach the full transcendental, complete expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedic literature proves this. Om Purnam Adat Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Ishopanishad invocation. Excuse me for a minute. Translation to the Ishopanishad invocation. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are completely equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete by itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 5.1. It is most apparent that non-devotees violate the rules and regulations of devotional service to equate the whole cosmic manifestation, which is the external feature of Vishnu, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the controller of Maya, or with its quadruple expansions. Equating Maya with Spirit, or Maya with the Lord, is a sign of atheism. The cosmic creation, which manifests life in forms from Brahma to the ant, is the external feature of the Supreme Lord. It comprises 1/4 of the Lord's energy, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Ekankshena Stito Jagat, Bhagavad Gita 10.42. The cosmic manifestation of the illusory energy is material nature, and everything within material nature is made of matter. Therefore, one should not try to compare the expansions of material nature to the Chaturvyuha, the quadruple expansions of the personality of Godhead. But unfortunately, the Mayavadi school unreasonably attempts to do this. 4. To answer Shankaracharya's commentary on Vedanta Sutra 2.2.45, the substance of the transcendental qualities and their spiritual nature is described in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Purva 5.208 to 2.14 as follows. Some say that transcendence must be devoid of all qualities, because qualities are manifested only in matter. According to them, all qualities are like temporary, flickering mirages. But this is not acceptable. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is absolute, His qualities are non-different from Him. His form, name, qualities, and everything else pertaining to Him are as spiritual as He is. Every qualitative expansion of the absolute personality of Godhead is identical with Him. Since the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead is identical, is the reservoir. Since the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all pleasure, all the transcendental qualities that expand from Him are also reservoirs of pleasure. This is confirmed in the scripture known as Brahmatarka, which states that the Supreme Lord Hari is qualified by Himself, and therefore Vishnu and His pure devotees and their transcendental qualities cannot be different from their persons. Let me repeat that again. This is really good stuff. Since the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is the reservoir of all pleasure, all the transcendental qualities that expand from Him are also reservoirs of pleasure. This is confirmed in the scripture known as Brahmatarka, which states that the Supreme Lord Hari is qualified by Himself, and therefore Vishnu and His pure devotees and their transcendental qualities cannot be different from their persons. In the Vishnu Purana, Lord Vishnu is worshipped in the following words: "Let the Supreme Personality of Godhead be merciful toward us. His existence is never infected by material qualities." In the same Vishnu Purana, it is also said that all the qualities attributed to the Supreme Lord, such as knowledge, opulence, beauty, strength, and influence, are known to be non-different from Him. This is also confirmed in the Padma Purana, which explains that whenever the Supreme Lord is described as having no qualities, this should be understood to indicate that He is devoid of material qualities. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 1:16-29, it is said, "O Dharma, protector of religious principles, all noble and sublime qualities are eternally manifested in the person of Krishna, and devotees and transcendentalists who aspire to become faithful also desire to possess such transcendental qualities. It is therefore to be understood that Lord Sri Krishna, the transcendental form of absolute bliss, is the fountainhead of all pleasurable transcendental qualities and inconceivable potencies." In this connection, we may recommend references to Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 26, verses 21, 25, 27, and 28. Sripad Ramanujacharya has also refuted the arguments of Shankar in his own commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which is known as the Sri Bhashya. Sripad Shankaracharya, quote, Sripad Shankaracharya has tried to equate the Pancharatras with the philosophy of the atheist Kapila, and thus he has tried to prove that the Pancharatras contradict the Vedic injunctions. The Pancharatras state that the personality of Jiva called Sankarshan has emerged from Vasudeva, the supreme cause of all causes, that Pradyumna, the mind, has come from Sankarshan, and that Aniruddha, the ego, has come from Pradyumna. But one cannot say that the living entity, Jiva, takes birth or is created, for such a statement is against the injunction of the Vedas. As stated in Nikata Upanishad 2.18, living entities, as individual spiritual souls, can have neither birth nor death, All Vedic literature declares that the living entities are eternal. Therefore, when it is said that Sankarshan is Jiva, this indicates that he is the predominating deity of the living entities. Similarly, Pradyumna is the predominating deity of the mind, and Aniruddha is the predominating deity of the ego. It has been said that Pradyumna, the mind, was produced from Sankarshan, but if Sankarshan were a living entity, this could not be accepted, because the living entity cannot be the cause of the mind. The Vedic injunctions state that everything, including life, mind, and the senses, comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is a beautiful argument. I'm going to repeat this again. It has been said that Pradyumna, the mind, was produced from Sankarshan, but if Sankarshan were a living entity, this could not be accepted, because the living entity cannot be the cause of the mind. The Vedic injunctions state that everything, including life, mind, and the senses, comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is impossible for the mind to be produced by a living entity, for the Vedas state that everything comes from the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Lord. Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha have all the potent features of the Absolute Personality of Godhead according to the revealed scriptures, which contain undeniable facts that no one can refute. Therefore, these members of the quadruple manifestation are never to be considered ordinary living beings. Each of them is a plenary expansion of the Absolute Godhead, and thus each is identical with the Supreme Lord in knowledge, opulence, energy, influence, prowess, and potencies. The evidence of the Pancharatras cannot be neglected. The evidence of the Pancharatras cannot be neglected. Only untrained persons who have not genuinely studied the Pancharatras think that the Pancharatras contradict the Shrutis regarding the birth or beginning of a living entity. And in this connection, we must accept the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam, which states, the Absolute Personality of Godhead, who is known as Vasudeva, and who is very affectionate toward his surrendered devotees, expands himself in quadruple forms, who are subordinate to him and at the same time identical with him in all respects. This Paushkara Samhita states, the scriptures that recommend that Brahmanas worship the quadruple forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are called agamas, authorized Vedic literatures. In all Vaishnava literature, it is said that worshipping these quadruple forms is as good as worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva, who in his different expansions, complete in 6 opulences, can accept offerings from his devotees of the results of their prescribed duties. Worshipping the expansions for pastimes, such as Nrisingha, Rama, Shesha, and Kurma, promotes one to the worship of the Sankarshan quadruple. From that position one is raised to the platform of worshipping Vasudeva, the Supreme Brahman. In the Paushkara Samhita, it is said, if one fully worships according to the regulated principles, one can attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. It is to be accepted that Sankarshan, Pradyumna and Aniruddha are as good as Lord Vasudeva, for they all have inconceivable power and can accept transcendental forms like Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna and Aniruddha are never born, but they can manifest themselves in various incarnations before the eyes of pure devotees. This is the conclusion of all Vedic literature, that the Lord can manifest himself before his devotees by his inconceivable power is not against the teaching of the Pancharatras. Since Sankarshan, Pradyumna and Aniruddha are respectively the predominating deities of all living entities, the total mind and the total ego, the designation of Sankarshan, Pradyumna and Aniruddha as Jiva, mind and ego is never contradictory to the statements of the scriptures. These terms identify these deities just as the terms sky and light sometimes identify the absolute Brahman. How many more pages do we have to go? Can you tell?
There's like 6
more?
paragraphs.
6 paragraphs.
37.
Okay. The scriptures completely deny the birth or production of a living entity. In the Parama Samhita, it is described that material nature, which is used for other purposes, is factually inert and always subject to transformation. The field of material nature is the arena of the activities of fruitive actors, and since the material field is externally related with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is also eternal. In every Samhita, the Jiva, living entity, has been accepted as eternal, and in the Pancharatras, the birth of the Jiva is completely denied. Anything that is produced must also be annihilated. Therefore, if we accept the birth of the living entity, we also have to accept his annihilation. But since the Vedic literatures say that the living entity is eternal, one should not think the living being to be produced at a certain time. In the beginning of the Parama Samhita, it is definitely stated that the face of material nature is constantly changeable. Therefore, beginning, annihilation, and all such terms are applicable only in the material nature. Considering all these points, one should understand that Shankaracharya's statement that Sankarshan is born as a jiva is completely against the Vedic statements. His assertions are completely refuted by the above arguments. In this connection, the commentary of Sridhar Swami on Srimad Bhagavatam 3.1.34 is very helpful. For a detailed refutation, as if we didn't just get a detailed refutation, listen to this. For a detailed refutation of Shankaracharya's arguments attempting to prove Sankarshan, an ordinary living being, one may refer to Srimad Sudarshanacharya's commentary on the Sri Bhashya, which is known as Shruta Prakashika. Hare Krishna. The original quadruple forms, Krishna, Baladev, Pradyumna and Aniruddha, expand into another quadruple, which is present in the Vaikuntha planets of the spiritual sky. Therefore, the quadruple forms in the spiritual sky are the second manifestation of the original quadruple in Dwarka. As explained above, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna and Aniruddha are all changeless, transcendental plenary expansions of the Supreme Lord, who have no relation to the material modes. The Sankarshan form in the second quadruple is not only a representation of Balaram, but also the original cause of the causal ocean, where Karnadakashayi Vishnu lies asleep, breathing out the seeds of innumerable universes. In the spiritual sky, there is a spiritual creative energy, technically called Shuddha Sattva, which is a pure spiritual energy that sustains all the Vaikuntha planets with the full opulences of knowledge, wealth, prowess, etc. All these actions of Shuddha Sattva display the potencies of Mahasankarshan, who is the ultimate reservoir of all individual living entities who are suffering in the material world. When the cosmic creation is annihilated, the living entities who are indestructible by nature rest in the body of Mahasankarshan. Sankarshan is therefore sometimes called the total jiva. As spiritual sparks, the living entities have the tendency to be inactive in the association of the material energy, just as sparks of a fire have the tendency to be extinguished as soon as they leave the fire. The spiritual nature of the living being can be rekindled. However, in association with the Supreme Being, the spiritual nature of the living being can be rekindled. However, in association, the spiritual nature of the living being can be rekindled, however, in association with the Supreme Being. Because the living being can appear either in matter or in spirit, the jiva is called the marginal potency. Sankarshan is the origin of Karana Vishnu, who is the original form, who creates the universes, and that Sankarshan is but a plenary expansion of Sri Nityânanda Rama. Hare Krishna. Okay, I asked for that one and I got it. It's nectar, pure nectar. If anyone would like to reflect on that, please feel free. That's the end of our reading. I knew that we were only going to read one purport. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, who's got something for us? Either they're asleep or stunned or left the room or something. Or trying to figure out what they're going to say. Or all of the above. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Jiva Goswami Ki Jai. Rupa Goswami Ki Jai. Madhvacharya Ki Jai. Ramanujacharya Ki Jai.
Something from Rati Manjari.
Hey Rati, took you a little while to figure that one out.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Could you please give us a summary of what you just read, focusing on the most important points?
Oh my God, what are you, some kind of nutcase? No, that's not, I'm just joking with you. I'm just joking with you. A summary of what we just said, what we just heard.
Focusing on the most important points that we need to know.
Well, that's quite a task. I don't know if I'm qualified or capable of doing that. I'm sure I'll leave something out, or I'm not very scholarly. But the purpose of the purport is to refute the commentary of Shankaracharya on the Vedanta Sutra. And what he's done is he has more or less stated that Vyasadeva has made a mistake. Remember, we heard how the inconceivable energy of Krishna is only reconciled within Krishna. You can't reconcile Krishna's inconceivable potencies by your limited speculative power in this material world. So Shankaracharya is saying that the Vaishnavas say that Vasudeva, that Shankaracharya expands from Vasudeva, Pradyumna expands from Sankarshan, and that Aniruddha expands from Pradyumna. So what he's saying is that if we accept that they're all for the same, that they're all coming from one another, then there must be more than one God. Because he's applying cause and effect in a material conception to these four personalities. He's saying that if Sankarshan came from Vasudeva, and Pradyumna came from Sankarshan, and Aniruddha came from Pradyumna, then they must be four separate personalities by the law of cause and effect. And we've heard a refutation of that misconception by various commentaries of the acharyas and from verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam that describes how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his energies are inconceivable. So inconceivable that he can expand himself in 16,000 forms and be with 16,000 queens at the same time and still be one person. So all contradictory concepts are reconciled within the personality of Godhead. In that analysis, Shankaracharya is trying to say that Sankarshan is the jiva. But Rupa Goswami and others are explaining that Sankarshan is the deity of the jivas, just as Aniruddha is the deity of the mind, and Pradyumna is the deity of the intelligence. It doesn't mean that Pradyumna is the intelligence, or that Aniruddha is the mind. That would mean that the absolute truth would change. And then we heard from the Ishopanishad, the verse that says, however many units emanate from the absolute truth, each one of them is self-sufficient. Like this universe, within the coverings of this universe, the universe is self-sufficient. It doesn't need things from outside of the universe in order to maintain. So all of Krishna's energies, expansions are like that. And especially, he doesn't change. So if you say that the cause and effect principle is present in these expansions, then you are saying, in effect, that Krishna changes. But he doesn't change. He doesn't take birth. His expansions don't take birth. The living beings don't take birth. The material energy is, the forms created by the material energy are temporary. That's all. Is that something, what I just said? Therefore, if we try to understand, as we were talking about yesterday, if we try to understand with our limited intelligence things like the source of the jiva, when the jiva came into existence, when it came into the material world, and how and why, and all those things, and when, you can't understand that with your limited mind, the material mind and senses and intelligence. You can't. Therefore, unless one actually comes to the point of transcendentally accepting that Krishna, the Absolute Truth, is inconceivable, that he can do anything he wants. There is no limitation to what he can do, or know, or feel. Unless you actually, this is Jiva Goswami in the Sandarbhas. He says you cannot understand the Absolute Truth until you can actually grasp, understand, and realize that Krishna is inconceivably powerful. That is realized by constant hearing and chanting of his glories and accepting them for what they are, or at least in the beginning, theoretically, accept them for what they are, and don't always try to challenge at every moment, everything, every detail. And that prevents us, that mentality prevents us from hearing. Because hearing with rapt attention, without argument, is the only way you can get to understand these things. Therefore, hear inoffensively, again and again, again and again, and don't stop until you get it. And then you'll understand. And then when you understand, you will be able to explain it to others in detail. And to the extent that you can do that, to that extent, to that degree, you are free from material nature. Okay, that's all I have to say about that, unless Roddy's got something else. Okay, so I highly recommend, if there's anybody left out there, I highly recommend, it's Ekadasi over here, don't mind, I'm a little giddy. I highly recommend that you go over this purport again, very carefully, at your own pace. Try to understand, again and again.
Rati Manjari says, beautiful. It's good like that.
Well, thanks, Rati. Thanks very much. Thanks for the question. You're the only one that's bold enough to ask a question like that. I always feel a little extended. In other words, push me a little bit more and a little more, and that helps me to go deeper into what I know. Because we can't always get what we know out. We don't always get access to it. Therefore, your question was glorious because it got something out. Okay, all of you out there that are either asleep or have run away or are just sitting there shaking your heads going, what the heck is going on here? We love you all, and we hope that this Caitanya-caritämrta, here we've been from the 4th chapter, we're hearing all the nectaring, loving affairs of Radha and Krishna and their relationship and all these things, and all of a sudden here we are, smack dab in the middle of refuting Mayavad philosophy, so that we can actually purify our intelligence, strengthen our intelligence, so that we can resist the temptations of Maya and become eligible to go back home, back to Godhead, this lifetime. Hare Krishna. Shri Caitanya-caritämrta Pig Jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. We'll see you, if you dare, tomorrow night, same time, same place, same station. Hare Krishna.